And here it does as well. Let's look at the both sides. Number one, a member candidate must not solicit gifts, favors, donations from the target hires if they are in a position to do so. I think that makes sense. I don't need to explain that. Should also refuse gifts. Before I said, let's not use any extreme words. We had the word reasonable in here. I'm going to take the word for this one, take the word reasonable out. There is no reasonable gift at this point. You should refuse any and all gifts, because you're making a selection from a candidate pool. You got to choose someone. Any gift whatsoever, any favor, anything is going to taint the process. If you are on the other end, you're the one being considered, you must not use gifts or favors. You'd still be in violation of this. So the key here, don't be influenced and don't influence. Both are covered by this standard. So how do we avoid falling into the trap? Recommended procedures for compliance. Number one, protect the integrity of opinions. Every research report reflects the unbiased opinion of the writer. Now, that's kind of generic, protect the integrity of the opinions, but you can have firm policies that really place that as a priority. Create a restricted list. No coverage if an adverse opinion is not welcomed. So if your firm doesn't want an adverse opinion out about a particular client company, put the client company on a restricted list. There, no research. Restrict special cost arrangements. No payment or reimbursement by any corporate issuer. Limit gifts to just token amounts only. A hat, a shirt. Business-related entertainment. Number 5, restrict investments, such as in IPOs or private placements. Sometimes, as an analyst, you might be rewarded with some allotment to an IPO, and you are expected to be covering that company later on. Suddenly, you kind of want that company to do well, right? So, restrict investments in those type of things. Number 6, review procedures. And this is kind of written funny. Even in the text, I had to read it a couple times saying, what do you mean review procedures? But that's not, it's not to review your procedures. It's that you have a review procedure. And here's what it is. A supervisory or review procedure related to personal investments. What are you investing in? What companies are you covering? And what type of reports are you issuing? Is there a correlation? So it is a review procedure, not review your procedures. I read that section a couple of times. I said, doesn't make any sense. Review your procedures. Until I said, no, the stress is the other way around. Okay, that makes more sense now. Independence policy. A written policy about the independence and objectivity of research. Research analysts should not be supervised by potential influencing department. So that the reporting structure you have should be in line with your independence policy. If you have a policy that says, our research is this and this and this and that, but now you're expected to report to the head of sales, that look like the policy and your actions are saying two different things. Standard 1C, misrepresentation. And this starts to get a little bit more clear. Now, the last two, misrepresentation and misconduct, it's a lot more clear. The first, the last one we just did, independence, objectivity, even when you read different scenarios on it, you're still left sometimes in some situations thinking, I could go either way on this one. And I'll admit, same with me. I read some of the scenarios and I think, I don't know. It wouldn't affect me. But then I have to remember, it doesn't have to affect me. It just has to affect the view that other people may have about my independence and objectivity. All right, too much on that one. Misrepresentation, again, straightforward. The member candidate must not knowingly make misrepresentations. I'm going to underline that word, knowingly. Also, what should be added here is should not knowingly or reasonably should have known. Make misrepresentations relating to investment analysis, recommendations, actions, or other professional activities. So let's see what that means. Let's put some guidance behind this. Any written untrue statement or omission of fact. Sometimes what you're not saying is misrepresentation. Any false or misleading statement, whether it be oral, written, or electronic. Member candidates should not guarantee investment performance unless it's part of the product. You can't. Anybody who says, look, I guarantee you're going to make money on this, just run away, because they can't make a guarantee that you're going to make money unless it's part of the product itself, like a principal protected note or a GIC, where that is part of the product is the guarantee. There's still no guarantee of performance. There's only guarantee of principal. Nobody can guarantee performance. So saying something like that, you're misrepresenting what you have control over. Impact on investment practice. The member candidate must not represent any aspect of their practice, their credentials, their qualifications, or their performance record. Exercise care and diligence when using third-party information, because that third-party information could be wrong. Disclose intended use of external managers, and you must not claim their performance as your own. When I say there, I'm talking about the member candidates. They must not claim the performance of the external manager as their own. Performance reporting. The member candidate should not misrepresent the success of their performance record. And later in this session, there are 2 readings on the on GIPS. We'll talk about this type of thing there. Should not misrepresent the success of their performance record, such as by using non-comparable benchmarks. And here's a point that you should keep in mind. Standard 1C does not actually require a benchmark to be provided. So when you're presenting your record, you don't actually have to provide a benchmark. You don't have to. But if you do, you cannot misrepresent that benchmark. Should use appropriate benchmarks for performance and fee calculation. Should provide accurate and reliable security pricing to clients. An omission. That is also a misrepresentation, is an omission. Watch for the silence. What are they not saying? Any data point, whether it be a model input or composite development, any data point that you omit. And I will say that academics are notorious for this type of thing. They get a data set and they start looking at it and it doesn't tell them what they want it to say. So they go through and they call certain things outliers. Well, let's just get rid of these data points. They look like they're outliers. They don't fit in the right distribution. And they will torture that data set until it confesses. So any data point, whether it be a model input or a composite development, is considered an omission and a misrepresentation. Next context, social media. How do we deal with that? Well, the same information as allowed to distribute to clients, whether current clients or potential clients. So whatever information that you're allowed to distribute to your clients, same thing with social media. That's what you're limited to as well. All communication through social media has to adhere to the code and standards. Anonymity is no release from obligations. Plagiarism. This is a particularly bad one, and it's actually a very popular one, unfortunately, and it's particularly bad. Saying that from a professor point of view, listen, it's not just bad among students, it's bad among professors. The amount of papers that are withdrawn every year because of plagiarism, because of large chunks just lifted from other sources without attribution, is appalling at this level. And even in the analyst community, lifting other people's work happens more than you would think. More than you would think. The pressure to produce can force people to do all sorts of things, right? It is the practice of copying, using in substantially the same form materials prepared by others without acknowledging the source. Okay? So let's be clear what plagiarism is. Plagiarism isn't using something else or material prepared by others. It's doing so without acknowledgement. I mean, I can start a paper with a quote and halfway down the paper end the quote and have a little footnote down there and attribute the source of that. That's not plagiarism. That's a lot of unoriginal content. It's not my content. If I were reading something that were full of quotes, I would say, look, just give me the original paper and I'll read it. I don't need to read your fully quoted paper of somebody else's. But not putting that in, there's plagiarism. Putting it in, that's not plagiarism. That's just a lot of unoriginal thought. That's just somebody, I think, that probably doesn't quite know what's important, so is throwing everything at me in quotes, hoping I'll figure out what's important. Anyways, Copying, using in substantially the same form, materials prepared by others, this is it right here, without acknowledging the source, claiming research as your own, using excerpts verbatim, or slight changes. And again, so you're going to paraphrase something you read somewhere else, and you're basically using it pretty much as it was, maybe even the same analogy, without any changes at all, or slight changes. That's still plagiarism. Other things, citing quotations as from leading analysts without specific reference, presenting statistical estimates, forecasts prepared by others with citation, so you are citing them, but you're leaving out their limitations. There may be certain caveats or limitations that they presented with that. So you find some statistical estimates and forecasts that are very, very favorable and that make your point very clear. But there might be a caveat saying, note, this is a hypothetical situation to show a particular scenario under absolutely perfect conditions. Well, you didn't include that. Using charts or graphs without stating the source. Copying proprietary computerized spreadsheets or algorithms without cooperation or authorization of the creators. So you are okay to distribute third-party reports, by the way, and even to précis those reports. Précis means you're just going to go through them, take out the good stuff, and present the good stuff. You're just going to aggregate a whole bunch of research from different sources, take out the important stuff, and send it off in one report. That's okay to do. You're acknowledging who everyone else is, and you're acknowledging that that's what you're doing. Look, all I'm doing is I'm just aggregating and consolidating other research for you. Here you go. Here are the highlights. That's fine. That's not plagiarism. Plagiarism also extends to oral communication, use of audio or video media and electronic media. So be careful about your online presence. Everybody's got one, so be careful. What about work completed for an employer? For instance, I work for an institution, and part of what I do is prepare presentations for class. Well, do they belong to me or do they belong to the institution? Well, it turns out they belong to the institution. They don't belong to me. So no matter what I prepare for in class, and next semester I get another course and somebody had the course I had, that material is theirs to use. It belongs in a commons area that everyone can use. Well, that's the same of all of the research you do for any employer. You don't own that research. You've been paid for it. Your employer owns it all. So you may use previous internal research because it's the property of the firm. However, you may not simply reissue a previously released report under your own name. So if you wrote a lot of research for a company and then you left that firm and somebody else started to use that research along with their own, and you looked at the reports going, I did most of that. No, you've been paid for that. The copyright on that no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the firm. The firm is putting out that research. The firm is perfectly okay to put it out. It owns it. So, that's where plagiarism really wouldn't come into play there, is when you have been paid for something, you've given up the copyright for it. Tough. So, recommended procedures for compliance. Factual presentations. Firms can provide guidance for written or oral communication. As professors, we have to do this every semester. Every semester we have students who have gone through this how many times, but we still have to say what our plagiarism policy is right up front. Designating who can speak on behalf of the firm. And I used to do a radio show that aired in the morning with two other investment professionals, and one of them was part of a larger firm. And that person had to have the content and the questions well before the show to have the answers cleared by their compliance department, so that they had to stay on script, so that if me and the other person went off script and talked about something else, they had to stay mute. Well, stand silent. They had to say nothing because although they were designated to speak on behalf of the firm, only within a very tight script. Qualification summary provided as part of the presentation. Verify your outside information. Where did it come from? Does it exist anywhere else? Here's how easy it is. When I get something that's just a little too well written, or I get something where there's a line or a statement in there where I say, well, that's a little outside of the scope of what you know. I know that that's beyond your qualifications. I'll type it into Google and I'll find it. Oh, I'll find it. You wouldn't believe how easy it is to find. Take any sentence from any book, try it. Take any sentence, type it into Google. I guarantee you'll find it. Why? Because you'll get a link to Amazon for that exact book. If it's in an academic report, if it's in a research report, if it's out there, you will find it. So if you're reading something that comes from outside and you're suspicious about where it's from, put it into Google. Check it out. I guarantee you'll find something. Maintain your web pages. Everybody might have a web page. Maybe people are free to upload things to the web page. Maybe people are free to leave comments on web pages. Monitor the materials that are posted. And finally, a plagiarism policy can go a long way. Some of the things that a plagiarism policy would have to make sure you stay on the right side of the line. Number one, maintain copies of all your source material. Anything you use in developing your reports, keep a copy of it. Every reference. It's easier to reference something if you have it with you than after the fact when you have to go looking for all of the references that you used. Attribute all your quotations, all your projections, tables, statistics. Nothing wrong with attributing. It's okay. It's not somebody's going to read it and say, well, this person's attributing everything to everyone else. It's part of writing a research report is there's going to be some original thought, but there's already a huge body of secondary material out there. You're going to want to look at that first before you go beyond it, so that's okay. Attribute summaries. Sometimes you're just going to summarize something or paraphrase something. Well, you're going to want to attribute that to its proper source. And here you don't have to be really formal. And because you're paraphrasing, it's not like you have open quote, close quote, footnote. You can simply just say something like this, as per so-and-so, 2016, blah, 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 and you could just paraphrase it, and then in your references, you would have so-and-so, and you'd have exactly what the reference is, but maybe you're just paraphrasing the gist of what that person is saying, and there's no one particular quote that sums it up, but it spans over 2 or 3 paragraphs, and you're just going to sum it up in 2 or 3 sentences. Well, you still have to do an attribution for that. Standard 1D, misconduct. The member candidate must not engage in any professional conduct involving dishonesty, fraud, or deceit, or commit any act that reflects adversely on their professional reputation, integrity, or competence. Earlier I said you got to watch out for these extreme words, and we have another extreme word here. So let's have a look at that word. Any act. Now that's an extreme word. So as we're going through this standard, we're going to want to see exactly where the boundaries of this one are. What perimeter does it draw? Because that's pretty broad. If I tell a joke that nobody finds funny, is that misconduct? If somebody says, well, I don't think that guy's too smart telling a joke like that, does that reflect poorly on my competence? So when I see the word any act, that's when my antenna go up and I say, okay, hang on a second. Let's put a fence around this, not so I know where I can cross the line, just so I know where the limits are. So let's get some guidance here. This is different from 1A. 1A really dealt with knowledge of the law. So yeah, you can't cross a legal or a regulatory line. And 1A was that you had to comply with all the laws, rules, regulations of governments, regulatory organizations. What else was there? Was licensing agencies. I'm trying to remember here, and professional associations. So you had to follow the dotted lines there. 1D, misconduct, is broader. All conduct that reflects poorly. So, okay, now we're starting to limit the any act. All conduct that reflects poorly on the integrity or reputation of the member or candidate. Conduct that damages the trustworthiness or competence of the member candidate. And I can see that. Because, listen, this whole business of finance is built on a solid foundation of trust. If trust is gone, money disappears. Why? Because nobody's going to put their money into a system they simply do not trust. And markets fall apart. Trust is number one. Confidence in the system. So we're starting to see where that would apply. So here are some activities that we would consider or that could be considered within the scope. Abusing alcohol or drugs during business hours. So you go out for lunch and you're just pounding them back and you're with a client. Well, that doesn't look too good from the client's point of view. That would be considered misconduct. I think your employer would have a rule against that as well, especially the drugs part, right? Personal bankruptcy, and well, that's not a bad thing. Personal bankruptcy brought about by fraudulent or deceitful business conduct. Well, yeah, that would be a big question mark, right? Some more guidance here. Sometimes misconduct doesn't have to happen from an overt act. It could simply happen from the absence of an act. Even the absence of appropriate conduct or the lack of sufficient effort could be considered misconduct. Relying on someone else to get something done without following through. Saying, well, I thought so-and-so was going to take care of it, so you had to execute a trade for a client. Somebody else is going to do it for you. You didn't bother following up on it. It never happened. You didn't check. You didn't have a process to check. The absence of your effort could be considered misconduct. You should have been on top of that. Yeah, it was somebody else's fault. It fell through the cracks. But because you allowed it to, well, the buck stops with you, right? You're responsible for everyone under you. Recommended procedures for compliance. Number 1, a code of ethics. Developed or adopt. A code of ethics to which every employee must subscribe. A list of violations. If I don't know what's wrong, right? Plus the associated disciplinary actions as well. There's your deterrence. So the list of violations is my education. Now I know where the line is, and I know what's going to happen if I cross it. Employee references. Check those that are given to you, plus others. Listen, when somebody applies for a job and you ask for references, I find that a complete and utter waste of time. Why would I want you to give me 3 references? What are you going to give me? You're going to give me 3 glowing references, or you're going to give me 3 names of people who are going to give you glowing references. I'm going to find no problems. Now, I can structure my questions such that I can catch them off guard, perhaps, and get them to answer something that they weren't prepared for, but that's not good enough. Tell me where you work. I'll make the calls myself. I'll dig around. I'll find my own references to ask. But handing me references, what is that? So, check references. And others as well. Other references not given to you. We are on standard 2 now, integrity of capital markets. And we're on 2A, material non-public information. And we got to tear this one apart first because this is a tricky one. This can be a little bit tricky. So we'll deal with material, then we'll deal with non-public, then we'll bring them together. And then we'll ask, is that always the case, though? So let's go ahead. A member or candidate who possesses material, non-public information that could affect the value of an investment. I'm going to underline that because that's the important part. When is it material? When it could affect the value of an investment. We'll get to it a little bit later, but I want to get that out there. Must not act or cause others to act on that information. So to put this in action, to operationalize this, we have to figure out what do you mean material and what do you mean non-public. All right, material. If its disclosure would likely have an impact on the price of the security, or if a reasonable investor would want to know the information before making an investment decision, we would call it material. So the CEO is about to quit. Out of nowhere? Would you want to know that? That sounds material to me. That sounds very material to me. Somebody, the shipyard manager wants to quit. Is that material? Probably not. Not that far down the chain of command. That's probably not material. Couldn't care less about that. Doubt it would change my mind about anything. So how do we know if it's material? Impact on the price is the big one. If we have a reasonable basis for concluding that, hey, you know what, this is going to impact the price, then it's material. The other thing is, well, listen, if I were about to buy this security and I knew that information beforehand, would I want to know that? Would it change my mind? Then it's material. So a bunch of things that are material, starting with the biggest earnings. Let's say you knew that EPS before it hit the street. Oof, that's nice. That's bad. That's nice. Both sides. You can look at that both ways, right? Pending M&A. Now here's the deal with M&A, is if you look at any announcement, and they usually are announced Monday morning, any announcement, the week before the announcement there was a run-up in the price. So it's out there. How is it that almost every single merger announcement on Monday morning, if you pull up a 1-week chart, the price ran straight up for 5 days, 4 or 5 days before the announcement? People just getting into it on the fly all of a sudden? I don't think so. Change in assets, innovation, discoveries. We can think of the announcements of Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 drug testing. Customer supplier changes, management changes, changes in auditor opinion, defaults, bankruptcy, legal disputes, large block orders. We'll talk a little bit about large block orders later, but knowing that there's a large block order coming through and stepping in front of it, buying in front of it, that's called front running. That's not a good thing. That's acting on non-public information. So to test whether or not you have any material non-public information, consider the source and the likely effect. When we look at the source, the less reliable the source, the less likely. So you go on those chat rooms for a particular stock. You go in, and Yahoo has a bunch of these. You can't rely on any of that information. Oh, I know this person and he said this, or I know that and he said that. Less reliable the source, the less likely. The more reliable, well, the more likely, right? And the likely effect. The more ambiguous the effect is, the less likely it's material. So if I tell you something about a company and I say, well, how do you think that'll affect the price? If you have to sit there and think, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it really would it? And if it did, I have no idea which direction it would go. Well, in that case, what can you possibly do? Even if you act on it, you'd still just be gambling because you have no idea. So it's less likely that it would be material. If the price effect is unclear, it may not be considered material, which means even if you have non-public information, if it is non-material, you're good. The two words go together here, material and non-public. So let's unpack this word, this non-public word. What is that? Information is non-public until it has been made available to the public. There you go. But there's a caveat here. There is a condition under which information is non-public, but it's not considered non-public under this standard, and we'll get to that. Selectively disclosed by a corporation to a small group of investors or analysts. So information released that way. See, not released to the public, it's just selectively released to investors and analysts. For the analyst, it's okay to get it. This standard is not saying, oh, you got to close your ears and go, la, 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 I can't hear you. No, that's not what it's saying. It is okay to receive non-public information. As an analyst talking to management in the company, you'll get non-public information all the time. It's just not okay to act on it. So it's okay for me to be in possession of material, non-public information, and I mean some serious material non-public information. I simply can't act on it or cause others to act on it. So I can't call my friend and say, hey, listen, why don't you buy a whole bunch of options on this? And I can't do that. So it is okay to have it. It is okay to get it. You just cannot act on it. So this is where the gray area comes in. I shouldn't say the gray area, but this is where the hazy area comes in something called mosaic theory. And what this is saying is that, look, I can analyze some of the public information that's out there. Plus, I can analyze some non-material, non-public information. But when I put them together, I have an interaction effect where I say, oh, now hang on a second. If this were known, this non-material, non-public information, it'd have no effect on anything. But because I'm able to connect the dots, suddenly this is a powerful thing. I may come up with a non-public material conclusion all on my own through the use of public information and non-material non-public information. May lead to a conclusion that may be material and non-public. What do I do now? Well, first of all, I wouldn't know that it's material and non-public. I'd have a fairly good feeling that, you know what, I think I got something here. If this were known, it would be huge, and I think I'm right. That's okay. That is not. You did not come into possession of material non-public information. You manufactured it from available sources, from public and non-material non-public. That's going to be your test right there, is how non-material was that non-public information. What do? Save all documents and research so that when you do use it, and you're going to, when you do, you can at least back it up saying, look, at every point along the way, nothing, my conclusion was never said. I arrived at that conclusion. You're good. Social media. Well, lots of things go out on social media that probably shouldn't, right? Members and candidates should verify that information from here is publicly available from another source. So if you get something off of social media and you say, oh, I didn't know that, and it's not available anywhere else, you may have come into possession of material non-public information. Now, how do you deal with that? How do you say, hey, look, I wasn't looking for it. I did nothing wrong. That tweet went out, or this blog went out, or that posting went out. Many people saw it. The moment it went out, it's public. Now you try using that. The moment it went out, it's public. Well, to find out, you should at least check, well, hang on, does this information appear anywhere else? And if it doesn't, well, I would say at that point, I don't have an answer. Your own firm would have to offer guidance on what you would do at that point. My thinking is, hey, whoever tweeted it, whoever sent it out has just made it public. They're in trouble with the regulator because they didn't put it out publicly. And maybe it's not available to everybody at the same time. And that's where when you read these standards, you start thinking, well, it's not as clear cut as you would think. And that's the point. If you walk away from these standards and you think, I don't know, it's, quantitative analysis was great because there was structure and form and you knew where you were going. With this, it seems so hazy and murky. Yes, that's the whole thing. It's hazy and murky, and they evolve as time goes on, which is why later on we're going to see that some of the recommendations is to have some policy in place where you can go to your firm and get guidance on this. Member candidates should verify the information available public from another source. If you distribute info with social media, make sure any regulatory filings have been made first. So if you decide that you want to reach out to a younger group of investors and you say, you know what, we're going to tweet our earnings at 4:05, you better make sure that you've already cleared the regulatory hurdle on that one. They have to be posted for everybody to get at the same time, and then you can take alternative methods of dissemination as well. Using industry experts, and that's another kind of murky, hazy one. Industry experts know stuff. They know stuff about that industry. That's why they're called an industry expert. They may know stuff that you don't know, or are able to come to conclusions and can interpret the information that's coming out better than you can. Well, that's okay. That would not fall or be a violation of Standard 2A. However, while you may pay for expert insight, you cannot pay for confidential information the expert may be privy to. Investment research reports. There may be an analyst effect. Now, this is a tricky one. There may be an analyst whose rating and whose type of research output can move the price of an asset. What do you do? At that point, let's say that the analyst is about to release a report and the firm knows, well, this is going to hurt the price of the firm. Well, since the analyst is not a company insider and did not use material non-public information, we're making the assumption that the analyst did not use material or non-public information. It's simply just the name can move markets. The report does not have to be made public before sharing, which means, let's say that I've got a great reputation for picking winners and losers in a particular sector. I know that I've done my analysis on a company and I have a recommendation. And I'm going to share it with just my clients. I'm eventually going to make it public, but I'm going to share it with just my clients first. Then I'm going to make it public. Are my clients gaining access to material, non-public information? Remember now, I can move markets. People are going to follow me just because of my reputation. The answer to that is no. I'm not a company insider. I'm a great analyst. I'm not a company insider. I did not use material non-public information. I came up with my own conclusions. However powerful they are, they're still mine. And I'm being paid for my research by my clients. That's the service I provide. I have no obligation to tell anybody else. But I'll share it with my clients first. I do want everyone else to see it though, because I want that market effect after I've been paid for my research. I want that market effect. That would not be a violation of material non-public information. So recommended procedures for compliance, and we got quite a lot of them here. Achieve public dissemination first. Encourage the issuer to make the information public. So you've come across, let's say that you were at an analyst meeting and the company shared some particular information with you that is material and non-public. What you should do is encourage the issuer to make the information public before you use it. Adopt compliance procedures. Review of employee and proprietary trading. Are you acting? Because remember now, you can't act on this. It's okay for you to have it, but if you're acting on it, that's a problem. Well, let's check out your trades. Let's see what's going on. Adopt disclosure procedures designed to ensure that information is disseminated equitably. Number 4, issue press releases. Number 5, firewall elements within firms. A firewall, by the way, I've mentioned it before, is an information barrier. It's so that one side of the organization can't really communicate that well with the other side of the organization. One can think of M&A on one side of the organization and research on the other side. Well, sometimes they need to talk. Sometimes the M&A people need to bring a research analyst over and ask them questions so that they can arrive at a valuation for something. Well, that analyst suddenly knows what's going on. Just by the questions that are being asked, they can figure it out. It's like, something's going on here. So that's what that firewall is, to try to keep them as separate as possible. So this information barrier is in between interdepartmental communications. Review of employee trading. You can develop watch lists, restricted lists, rumor lists. Are employees trading any stocks on those lists? Restricting interdepartmental communications means, let's say here's one department, here's research, and let's say here's M&A, and one person here has got to send an email to somebody over here. Well, it'll go to a third person first, who then reviews it and says, okay, that's fine, off it goes. This person answers, it goes here, okay, that's fine, off it goes. So that you maintain this information barrier. Nothing in these emails could be construed as sharing information. Appropriate interdepartmental communication, formalized. How do you communicate across here? And I've just sort of given you an example. Physical separation of departments and files. Number 8, prevention of personnel overlap. So investment banking versus corporate finance, sales versus research. Reporting system, have an information barrier in place. We've already talked about that. Personal trading limitations by employees. Reports of trading activity, and for those made for the benefits of their family members. That was discussed in an earlier standard as well. Use of a restricted list. Number 11, record maintenance, written records of communications among departments. This way here, if there's anything that comes up later on, well, you guys were talking. No, we weren't. Here's all our communication. Number 12, before I run away, and this should be the deterrence. I am shocked at the amount of times this just doesn't work, but this should be. Knowing that all of your communication is monitored and kept. I mean, if you're inside one of these firms, you pick up the phone and talk, that conversation's recorded. Every email is kept and recorded. Yet I'm surprised at how many people do stupid things and say stupid things in emails that you look at and you go, what were you thinking? You knew you were being monitored, and here you are blathering on. So maybe it's not such a great deterrence, right? 12, proprietary trading procedures. Restrictions will depend on the nature of the trading. Let me explain this a little bit. Let's say that there is a stock that's being placed on the restricted list. Well, that might be tricky. Once you place it on the restricted list, the firm says nobody trades in this one thing. But what if, in the normal course of business, the firm has always been seen as trading in it? Suddenly, the absence of them trading in it would make other market participants go, uh-oh, so-and-so company has backed away from this, something's going on. It would highlight that something's going on. So to not trade in it would be a signal. To suddenly start trading in something you've never traded may be a signal, but to suddenly stop doing something you've always done would also be a signal. So it depends on the nature of the trading that was going on. Communication to all employees, compliance policies and guidelines. This is probably the best way, is just to say, look, if you're in doubt, here's how you gain compliance. Here are the policies and guidelines you follow to ask a question, to say, look, is this offside or not? And proper training. Problem with this last one here, for anyone who has been through any kind of training like this whatsoever, is it is absolutely boring. And for some reason, whenever companies have this type of training, they seem to want to try to find the most uninteresting, boring person possible to present it. With no inflection in their voice, no personality whatsoever. Oh, and it's a 4-hour presentation. They're brutally boring. So this whole idea about proper training, I'm all in for that. But they always forget this word proper training. Well, we're on standard 2B, still on the integrity of capital markets, but we're going to talk about market manipulation now. So let's define it first. The member or candidate must not engage in practices that distort prices or artificially inflate trading volume with the intent to mislead market participants. I'm going to underline a word, because at the end of this one, I'm going to give you an example. And I'm going to ask you, do you think that's market manipulation? I'm going to underline this word intent, with the intent to mislead market participants. Now, let's read this again, and let's just pretend the word intent isn't there. Must not engage in practices that distort prices or artificially inflate trading volume. Well, let's say that I wanted to buy a large block of shares and I just bought them at the market. That's going to distort prices. And that is going to artificially inflate trading volume, because once I'm done, that volume disappears. My intent was not to mislead the market, however. I was simply just being stupid about the way I bought it. So we must be careful here. I may do something that distorts a price, or I may do something that artificially inflates trading volume without my intent being to mislead the market. This standard turns on the word intent, that your intent is to mislead. If your intent is not to mislead, and you do something that does move the price or does momentarily inflate volume that really isn't going to be supported in the long run, that's not market manipulation. It might be a stupid move. It might be a rookie trade, but it's not manipulation. That word is extremely important in this one, intent. The act of market manipulation disrupts the information content of prices, and that's what other people rely on. And if they can't rely on the information content of prices, it lowers investor confidence. It includes the dissemination of false or misleading information. Those chat boards you go on where everyone's talking about a particular stock and there's always one on there saying this thing is going down, sell, sell, sell.